Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Edsel Ford High School. I am honored to stand before you on this very special day. Let me begin by introducing the color guard who will lead us in the presentation of the colors. From the James Heward, Chapter 267 Color Guard, Vietnam Veterans of America, please welcome Mr. Larry Dotton, U.S. Navy, Mr. Dan Ryder, U.S. Army and Edsel Ford alumni, Mr. Frank Bartell, U.S. Army and Edsel Ford alumni, Mr. Dave Klein, U.S. Army, and Mr. Ken Van Hooser, U.S. Marine Corps. Now everyone will please rise for the Edsel Ford Vocal Ensemble who will be singing the national anthem.
Ready, set,
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the world of the free, and the home of the brave, home of the brave.
forward,
I would now like to acknowledge some special people in attendance today. Would all representatives from other veteran organizations please stand up? Mr. and Mrs. Jacqueline, thank you. Would all school board members please stand up for recognition? Mr. Hussein Berry, President. Ms. Roxanne McDonald, Treasurer and Edsel Ford parent. Please also welcome Superintendent Mr. Brian Whiston and Associate Superintendent Dr. Gail Shankman. Thank you to all our City Council members who are present today, of course, starting with Mayor Jack O'Reilly. Please also salute Mr. Doyle, our trumpeters, Mr. Andrew Less and Cambria Brantley, and our Edsel Ford Vocal Ensemble. Also a big thanks to Mr. Kalis for helping out with our instrumentalists and sound support. Thank you to our video production crew as well. And also any other media members present. Thank you. And of course, thank you to all the family members and friends of the 23 former Edsel Ford students that we are honoring today. Please stand. I would now like to take the time to acknowledge the refurbishing of the plaque that resides just outside those doors and back. Thank you to the class of 1968 who 3 years ago refurbished the plaque that honors these fine young men appropriately. The plaque is just above the table where the roses will be placed later in the ceremony. I am honored to be speaking with you today on such an important occasion. We are here to honor our service members and to remember the sacrifices they have made in honor of duty, honor, and country. Memorial Day is the day to acknowledge the sacrifices of those men and women who have given their lives for the service of their country. We are here today to honor our heroes, to remember their achievements, their courage, and their dedication, and to say thank you for their sacrifices. Thinking of the heroes who join us in this group today and those who are here only in spirit, a person can't help but feel awed by the enormity of what we encounter. We stand in the midst of patriots and the family and friends of those who have nobly served. The service members we honor today came from all walks of life, but they shared several fundamental qualities. They possessed courage, pride, determination, selflessness, dedication to duty, and integrity. All qualities needed to serve a cause larger than oneself. Many of them didn't ask to leave their homes to fight on distant battlefields. Many didn't even volunteer. They didn't go to war because they loved fighting. They were called to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They were ordinary people who responded in extraordinary ways in extreme times. They rose to the nation's call because they wanted to protect a nation which had given them, us, so much. Millions of Americans have fought and died on battlefields here and abroad to defend our freedoms and way of life. Today our troops continue to make the ultimate sacrifices, and even as we lose troops, more Americans continue to step forward and say, "I'm ready to serve." They follow in the footsteps of generations of fine Americans. Although there are different versions of how Memorial Day began, numerous informal observations began around 1866. Congress officially recognized Memorial Day as a federal holiday in 1887. Since then, with each passing year and subsequent conflicts, we've continued to honor our troops. We have awarded medals to many soldiers, added their names to monuments, and named buildings for them to honor them for their bravery. But nothing can ever replace the hole left behind by a fallen service member, and no number of medals and ribbons can comfort the ones left behind. This weekend, people throughout the country will gather together to remember, to honor, and to pay gratitude to those who have served our country. Our gathering is just one small spark in the flame of pride that burns across the nation today and every day. It pales in comparison, but it is one small way we can honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice so that we can live our life of freedom. Your presence here today, and that of people gathering all across America, is a tribute to those lost troops and to their families. It is our way to say that we remember. Thank you. Everyone in the military understands there is one leader of a platoon or regiment, so let me introduce you to ours, Superintendent of Dearborn Public Schools, Mr. Brian Whiston.
Thank you, Scott. First of all, I want to thank all the organizers, Scott, you and your team, for organizing this event, because it is important for us to remember. So thank you to all who had a hand in planning today's activities. Second of all, I want to remind everyone the importance of the day of Memorial Day. It's not just a day off of school or work. It's a day for us to remember those who served and paid the ultimate sacrifice. To the family members of those who we are honoring today, who are here in the audience, I say a personal thank you and almost an apology for what you and your families have had to go through in order for us to enjoy the great freedoms that we have today. Thank you for what it's meant to you and your family, and we're sorry for your loss. But we do thank those who served and made a difference so that we can enjoy these freedoms that we so richly enjoy in America today. So these people died. The impact on their family is severe, but because of them, we get to enjoy such a great country. So we do owe them a debt of gratitude. And it's important for us on this Memorial Day weekend not to just enjoy a day off, but to thank those who served. And so I hope students today and other staff that you have an opportunity to thank the family members here who sacrificed so much so that we can enjoy these freedoms. So enjoy Memorial Day. Yes, enjoy your day off. But remember, the important day is to thank those who have served and who paid the ultimate sacrifice with their life. Thank you very much.
Now the Edsel Ford Vocal Ensemble will perform If You're Reading This.
If you're reading this, my mama's sitting there. Looks like I only got a one-way ticket over here.
I sure wish I could give you one more kiss. And war was just a game we played when we were kids.
Well, I'm laying down my gun, I'm hanging up my boots. I'm up here with God and we're both watching over you. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town, and oh, my soul is where my mama always prayed that you would go. If you're reading this, I'm already home. Someone else, and that's okay. Just remember this, I'm in a better place, where soldiers live in peace and angels sing amazing grace. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town. Oh, my soul is where my mama always prayed that it would go. If you're reading this,
Now, please let me introduce the leader of this fine city of Dearborn, our mayor, Mr. Jack O'Reilly.
Well, Mr. Casebold did a great job of giving the background for Memorial Day. And I just want to talk about, the context, because that's 140 years ago that Congress decided, or roughly 147 years ago, that the Congress decided to have a Memorial Day. Life in America was very different. Today, Memorial Day, unless we're conscious of it, is really the kickoff of the summer season. It's the end of the winter for end of the school year. So it sort of loses its purpose if we don't really take the time to reflect on what it means. And so Edsel Ford High School has been outstanding in this, because every year this event is held, and students like yourself come and spend a few moments really honoring those people that were intended to be honored as this. Now, 347 people from Dearborn lost their lives in conflicts. And so those are the people that today we're reflecting on, because all of them gave up their life, gave up their future opportunities, gave up their plans. As you sit here, your short-term plans might be, what you're going to do at graduation, or events around graduation, or your summer, or thinking very consciously about what's next after high school. All of those things will occupy your minds, and they should. But for a moment, we want to take a moment and reflect on those people who made the ultimate sacrifice, who's sitting like you, thinking of the same things you're thinking of. Instead, were redirected either by their own initiative or sometimes by the draft, but they were redirected into another path, the path where they went out and fought for freedom, fought to make sure that democracy could survive on the face of the earth. And so I want to reflect, because this is a small pool of all the people who served. Our honor guard today represent many people who went, served very admirably, came back and served again in our community, served through so many ways. And I know these members have contributed to our community in so many different ways. So not only did they go and serve overseas and fight for freedom, but they came back and became vital parts of our community. And that's the majority. So what we celebrate today are those persons who didn't get that opportunity, who didn't come back to be able to fulfill all the promise that they had. And Edsel Ford really stands out. Being one of the newer schools in town, most of the people who we honor, of course, all of them are from Vietnam, because that was the major conflict that we dealt with after the school was established. But you've set, and I want you to understand, you set a national standard through Lisa Lark, with her support from the school district and from the students here, created a model for how we identify and relate to these people. Because the 347 people who passed lived in different times, throughout the history of our city. So to give a context, to get a sense of their humanness, to get a sense of the fact that they didn't go thinking they were going to die, they went thinking they'll go and serve and then come back and do other things. And since I know some of them, I knew they were planning to come back, go to school, go on, just as you're thinking about. But that didn't happen for them. And so the only way we can preserve their memory, the only way that we can really recognize the sacrifice they made, is to take a moment and reflect on it and what it means to us. And that's what this is all about. So I really, again, can't say enough about the fact that Edsel Ford High School has really stood out nationally, even in terms of its commitment to make sure that Memorial Day has a meaning, that it has a context that everybody understands. So again, good luck with everything you're going to do. I know you're going to do great things, but thank you for doing this today.
Now please let me welcome back and introduce to you Miss Lisa Lark, one of our Edsel Ford alumni and published author of the book entitled All They Left Behind, Legacies of Men and Women on the Wall. Please welcome Miss Lark as we will now begin our rose ceremony.
The majority of these men were only 19 years old when they died. The oldest was only 28. They walked these halls, they spent time with their friends, they played on sports teams, and they cruised up and down Telegraph on the weekends. They spent these last few months in May and June counting down the days until their graduation. They were just like you. This is Dennis Stancroft. He was the first of Dearborn's sons to die in Vietnam. While at Edsel Ford, Dennis was on the swim team. He enlisted in the Marines with 2 friends and was killed in combat on Christmas Eve, 1965. He was 20 years old. This is David Terwilliger. David and his family lived on Cleveland Street. He was on the wrestling team while at Edsel Ford before graduating in 1965. He enlisted in the Army so that he could have some control over his destiny rather than being drafted. He arrived in Vietnam in March of 1966 and was only in Vietnam a few weeks before being killed in combat. He was 19. This is Rudolph Jackie Mack. Rudy grew up with his 3 siblings, including his brother Ed, who is with us here today. After graduation, he was apprenticed as a rigger and joined a union. He was very mechanical and loved working on his car. He was drafted into the Army in 1965 and sent to Vietnam, where he served as a crewman on a helicopter. He often wrote home to his family about how part of his job was protecting the wounded when they evacuated them. He was killed in May of 1966. He was 21. This is Earl Smith. Earl and his twin sister, Earlene, split their time between California and Dearborn. Earl was a Boy Scout and enlisted in the Army because he wanted to do something important with his life. He served as a medic, and even though he was only supposed to stay on the front lines for 6 months, he volunteered to stay in the field. He was killed in action at the age of 19. This is Bruce Reynolds. Bruce grew up on Gertrude Street with his parents and 2 brothers. He enlisted in the Navy and was on active duty when he came home on leave to visit his family. He was killed in a car accident at the age of 19. This is John Cochran. John and his 3 sisters grew up on Roosevelt Street in a very religious family. He was a star athlete on the football and track teams while at Edsel and attended college and enlisted in the Army as an officer. He was in Vietnam as a lieutenant when he was killed by a sniper's bullet. He left behind a widow. He was 25. This is Alan Cartoonan. After graduating from Edsel in 1966, Alan enlisted in the Navy, where he was trained as a fireman's apprentice. He died in 1966 at the age of 19. This is George C. Siegwald II. George joined the Marines on the buddy system with his 2 friends, Dennis Stancroft, who we met earlier, and George Roller. He was well liked by his friends and enjoyed being a Marine. He was killed in 1967 at the age of 21. This is Robert Yoakum Jr. Everybody called him Chip. He lived with his parents and 3 sisters and was a very talented hockey player while growing up in Dearborn. While at Edsel, he acted in several plays, including Bye Bye Birdie. He enlisted in the Army and had just received his orders to deploy to Vietnam when he was killed in a motorcycle accident at the age of 21. This is Henry J. Fugit. He spent most of his childhood in Detroit before moving to Dearborn. He was a quiet young man and worked for a trucking company after he graduated. He was drafted in 1966 and arrived in Vietnam the following year. He was serving in a rifle platoon when he was killed at the age of 19. This is William A. Schmaltz III. He grew up in Dearborn with his parents and brother and enlisted in the Navy after graduation. He was stationed in the United States when he returned to Michigan to visit his grandmother. He was killed in a car accident while visiting. He was 20. This is David Brown. David was the oldest of 3 boys who grew up on Linden Street. He loved playing football and baseball in the house school fields. He was drafted in 1968 and began his tour of duty in Vietnam in April of 1969. He was killed in combat less than 2 months later. He was 20 years old. This is Michael Jangowski. Michael and his family grew up on Roosevelt Street. He struggled with health problems for most of his life, but he still was insistent upon serving his country. His health prohibited him from being deployed to Vietnam, but he spent years in Korea and Japan. He returned to the United States on leave and passed away when he was 22 years old. This is Donald Rowley. Don grew up on Edison Street with his parents and his 4 sisters. He was on the swim team while at Edsel and had many friends. He was drafted in 1969 and sent to Vietnam in April of 1970. He did not agree with what he was doing in Vietnam and had filed for conscientious objector status days before he was killed in a mortar attack at the age of 21. This is David Antal. David also grew up on Linden Street. He loved the outdoors, particularly camping and fishing with his father. He went to Henry Ford Community College and worked for Great Lakes Steel before being drafted. He was serving as a crew chief on a helicopter when it crashed in December of 1967. He was 20 years old. His mother still lives in the same house on Linden Street and misses him every day. This is James Stubblefield. James enlisted in the Air Force after graduating from Edsel in 1966. He was trained as a weapons mechanic. He survived a year's tour of duty in Vietnam and was on his way home when his plane crashed. He was 23 years old. This is Edwin Bird. Edwin came from a family of 4 children, and during the summers growing up in Dearborn, he worked at Camp Dearborn. He left Edsel after the 11th grade and joined the Navy. He got his GED while serving and was married with 3 stepchildren. He was killed in a car accident in Virginia at the age of 28. This is Alan Hosnettel. Alan was a champion swimmer while at Edsel and was well liked by his classmates. He was attending Michigan State, but had to drop out because of his father's illness. When he returned to Dearborn from Michigan State, he was drafted. He was a non-commissioned officer and was sent to Vietnam in July of 1968. He was killed in combat at the age of 23. His father passed away the following week. This is Michael Niezgoda. While at Edsel, Mike was often found in the shop classes working on his 66 Comet. He enlisted in the Army with his 2 best friends, Doug McElroy and Chuck Hanselman. He arrived in Vietnam in December of 1967 and was killed the following September, just 10 days after his 20th birthday. This is Jerry Clark. Jerry came from a big family, one of 8 children. He received an associate's degree from Henry Ford Community College and performed in a popular area band after teaching himself to play drums and clarinet. He was drafted in 1967 and sent to Vietnam in March of 1968. He had only been there 2 months when he was killed in combat at the age of 22. This is Chuck Hanselman. An only child, Chuck was a tough guy with a heart of gold. He could often be found protecting underclassmen from area bullies. He lettered in track while at Edsel and joined the military with his 2 best friends, Mike Niezgoda and Doug McElroy. He died in combat at the age of 19. Doug played football and basketball while at Edsel. He joined the Army with Mike Niezgoda and Chuck Hanselman. The 3 friends had made a promise to spend Christmas Day together in 1968 after coming home from Vietnam. Doug was killed less than a month after arriving in Vietnam. He was 19. His friend Chuck had died the day before. This is Randy Dillander. Randy was one of 5 kids, and he loved nature. He had hoped to be a conservation officer at a national park after graduation. He played football while at Stout Junior High and had many friends. He joined the Army and arrived in Vietnam in July of '67. He was serving as a canine dog handler. He was killed by a booby trap at the age of 19 while on a search and destroy mission.
In honor of our soldiers and their sacrifices, we will now listen to taps. Before I reintroduce the color guard, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't ask us to acknowledge the efforts of Mr. Don Claremont and Pete Kocianis who put this event together, and I'm sure the whole social studies team, so please thank them as well. Now please let me reintroduce the color guard who will retire the flags.
Retire the colors. Present. Hoop. Order. Hoop. Hey up. Hey. Forward. Hoop.
This concludes our program for today. Thank you all for attending. Students will remain in the auditorium until the bell rings to end first hour, so everyone else is free to go. Thank you.